A born and bred Ottawa man, Nick McCarthy is a proud alumni of the University of Ottawa. Communications is not just his profession, it is also his passion. McCarthy was the Director of Communications for the Association of Justice Council when the opportunity arose in 2017 for him to assume that same role with the Beechwood Cemetery. The choice was a quote, no-brainer, as this new job would allow him to tap into both his love of history and his natural talents as a storyteller. Since taking over the reins at Beechwood, McCarthy has successfully promoted Canada's National Cemetery as a place of active remembrance. Working closely with the Canadian Armed Forces, foreign attachés, and embassies, McCarthy coordinates numerous commemorative events every year. In this capacity, McCarthy has rubbed shoulders with numerous prominent world leaders, ranging from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to U.S. Vice President Mike Pence and Princess Margaret Francesca of the Netherlands. A prolific student of history, McCarthy reads between 60 and 70 non-fiction books a year. He still manages to maintain a healthy work-life balance by prioritizing the quality time he spends with his wife and 2 daughters. By applying his skills to creatively honor Canadian and Allied veterans, Nick McCarthy has definitely earned himself the rank of Captain of Industry.
Hi everyone, I am Francesca D'Ambrosio and I'm your host of Captain of Industry. Today I am with Nick McCarthy. Hi Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So briefly, if you want to just give me a little idea, where do you come from? What are you doing? Who are you?
That's a question. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications and Community Outreach for Beechwood Cemetery. So it's kind of a bizarre job and a bizarre role. There's not a lot of us across the country or the world that actually have the job that I do. I think there's like 5 of us, and when we're together, we tend to communicate. But you can imagine it's between an event planner, a writer, an author, a hardcore marketer where we're looking at actually making the sales, as well as a community outreach person who's always looking to connect in a meaningful way with different people and looking to sort of outreach to those groups and those communities that may not have ever thought that they needed a place to stay, those new communities, those new Canadians who really are looking to put down those roots. So from that, that's essentially who I am from a business perspective.
Okay. And what were you doing before that to make that transition over?
So I've always been in communications. So when I graduated, I had trial by fire through my first job in government was Measurement Canada. And it was in 2006, I believe. And it was during the gas pump crisis. And so a lot of people were questioning the volumetric rates of gas, so how much money you pay versus how much gas you get. And it became this hot topic issue thanks to reporters like Glenn McGregor. And that was my first entry into communications, and after that I was hooked. So since then it's been not-for-profits, for-profit private companies, as well as my last role was the Director of Communications for a national labor union, which was the Association of Justice Council.
Oh wow! So you went from justice to cemetery.
Yes.
Wow, that's quite the jump.
I went from lawyers to dealing with dead people,
Right.
which is phenomenal. One is much
Perfect
easier.
jump, yeah.
Easier
no one's
than
gonna
the
argue with you.
Exactly.
But there's this solemnness to it because this Beechwood is I guess Canada's version of Arlington.
Yeah.
It's up there like that. So do you find that we in Canada have that same level of reverence towards our
national cemetery? I think we're getting there. I think for years Beechwood was always called like Ottawa's hidden gem, right? We've been around for 150 years, but a lot of people would think of us as like, oh, we're all full, or we're exclusive to the military, we're exclusive to the RCMP, but we're really sort of the product of Canada. And when you go around the cemetery, and when you get to see the cemetery, especially during the spring, summer, and fall, because right now everything's under snow, but you get to sort of see the communities that you're part of and the communities that have evolved and made this country great. And you have sort of the Chinese community from the 1920s during the peak of the head tax. The Lebanese community comes in, and then you've got Egyptian Coptic, and you've got, of course, your Irish, your Scottish, your English, your French. But you have all these different groups that are together, and you get to sort of see how diverse our country is, but how in the end we're all together, buried side by side, both in the military sections and the non-military sections.
I love that. I actually read a little bit when you were saying that you highlighted the Latin American fighters who basically landed on Canadian soil and went off to fight and ended up dying there,
Yeah.
and you bringing that to the attention of Canadians, because I certainly didn't know that.
It's so. This was a great initiative done with D&D and the Latin American community. I'm not Latin American, so I get
Oh,
adopted
okay.
into the community, which is
Oh,
phenomenal.
that's nice.
But what it is there's a captain, and we formed an association now, or a committee, to call the Latin American Soldiers Committee. And he started to do some research and discovered that there was all these Latin American soldiers, born and bred, came to Canada strictly to fight for king and country,
Wow.
and then they died overseas. Most of them never returned to Canada, but they wore the Canadian uniform. So at no point was this ever recognized across the world. So we held the first. He came up with the idea, and they wanted to build a monument. And I'm like, a monument's fine, but if you don't have a community to support it, if you don't have a community to make it live, then you're just erecting a piece of stone. So we held the first ever Latin American Remembrance ceremony. It was on October 16th last year. And what made it so fantastic is because there's not a universal Latin American ceremony, we were able to create something a little different with some Latin American flavor, some good old traditional military moments. And the Embassy of Mexico supported us 100%. And we were able to sort of do this wonderful ceremony. And now, in next month, we'll be releasing our first book.
Wow.
So the first ever full list of Latin American soldiers that have fought for Canada,
Right.
never being citizens.
It's incredible.
It's so you have to think of that these people would have had this desire that was greater than themselves to come and serve and fight overseas for a country that they're not part of, and a country that they've never seen before.
Right. So did you imagine that's what your life was going to look like, leaving sort of the legal space and heading into this territory? You seem to have really, you're rubbing shoulders with Prime Minister Trudeau and foreign dignitaries and working with embassies. Did you imagine that was going to be?
No. When I left the Association of Justice Council, the thing that got me with Beechwood was the ability to touch history, right, and really be part of that Canadian history. And one of my first things that I said during this interview process, and there was quite a lot of us who interviewed, was that there had to be two plaques established: one for General Criar, and one for General Folks. And those, to me, they were the most important plaques, because these are not only our leaders during World War II, but they're also the people who essentially helped build Canada as a modern military fighting machine. I think that was really important to me. So one of the first plaques we did was at a Veterans Day, and we unveiled Criar's plaque. Tim Cook talked about how Criar was so important to Canadian military. And then the highlight for me, and it took us 4 years with the Dutch embassy, or the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, to make sure that I say it right, but to get the Princess Marguerite here and actually have her unveil the plaque for the man that liberated her country with her father. And there's that moment, and Folks's nephew, because Folks didn't have any children, but his nephew was there, and to see his nephew being able to see this validation. And that's something in Canada I think we kind of forget to do sometimes. If you go to Holland, there's Folks Road, Folks Bridge, Folks School, this, that. But in Canada, he was really forgotten. He came to Canada. He talked about a rapprochement with the U.S., a sort of continental strategy. And then he was kind of forgotten because, of course, most of our focus was on Europe and how to connect with Europe, and then the NATO pact and the furthering that advancement. So I think that's a signature moment, right? And it would be able to do that, and that being one of the first things I wanted to do, and being able to accomplish that was quite meaningful.
So very much so, very much so. So you've gotten these things that you kind of had your eye on the prize, and you've managed to get them all accomplished. What can we look forward to coming up? Any big plans?
So, well, it's our 150th this year, so it's a whole year of big plans. From we held a first ever Black History Month event. We are doing an Irish History Month event. We'll be looking at creating the Beechwood Arboretum. We're starting our Five Eyes Monuments project, which is supported by CSIS, which is nice.
That's nice.
And the idea is to have a monument built to the longest lasting intelligent partnership in world's history, right? But we're also continuing to build our RCMP pathway, which explores the 150 years of the RCMP. We're expanding the National Military Cemetery. So there's a lot of really, really phenomenal things, and to be part of that as not only as a marketer, but as a person who loves history, it's quite impactful for me.
Yeah, I can imagine so. So, in saying that, is there any sort of advice that you would give somebody who's looking to get into this space?
The bereavement sector is very interesting
Mm-hmm.
because what you're essentially doing is you're allowing the family to get that one last great thing, that one last great moment. And so it's very poignant that when we look at what we're able to do for our military members, our serving members, and the general public, the non-military public, it allows them that closure that we need. It allows them that ability. But for people to get, so to come back to people get into marketing as a whole, it's really look at what you love and then try to market that. And I find a lot of people try to get into marketing because that's the business they want to be in without the passion that they need.
Right.
And if you're not passionate about what you're selling, there's really you're not going to have that level of success. You're not going to have that ability to see beyond what the norm is.
Right. Well, you seem to have this brilliant ability to sort of grasp the intangibles of it all, right? Because you have to have passion, you have to believe in what you're selling. But what are you selling in the bereavement sector? There's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah, I think what's nice about Beechwood is we were able to do. I was given almost carte blanche.
Oh wow!
To really sort of do something different, and we've been able to embrace that Victorian mentality of what a cemetery should be. So a cemetery is in a part of the community, a place, a space of action, space of interaction, really a place for the living, because the dead's already there; they don't mind. So we've transitioned from 8 very structured events to about 100 a year, to at our peak 150 a year. And that revolves around tours. It revolves around a lot of different things that get the community out. We do movies, we have Shakespeare, haunted walks. We'll do our annual historical walk where we highlight different people within the cemetery and actors portray little vignettes.
Nice. Okay.
So people get to really understand their history and understand what makes Ottawa, Ottawa, what makes Bytown, Bytown, what makes this country really be who we are. And it's always interesting because we're always looking for diversity. We're always looking for interesting stories. And so we're always publishing new material and finding new stuff. So and new stories to share. And I think that's something that I love. And as a marketer, that's something that's super important.
So then I would say, what's the most rewarding thing that you would say?
Rewarding thing.
Pursuing this career.
It's being able to do that one last great thing. I think I don't really deal with a lot of the funeral and burial aspect. I deal once everyone is, but one of the more rewarding moments, it was at the National Memorial Ride. So this is a veterans ride that comes down to Beechwood. We have a small ceremony, and there was he was a Métis veteran, and we had just finished the development of the new military symbols for First Nations and Métis, so the medicine wheel and the infinity symbol. And we unveiled those properly on Aboriginal Peoples Day, which was phenomenal. But this was a few weeks before, it was around D-Day, so I think it was the 5th of June, and because we always hold it before D-Day. And so I'm speaking to this gentleman, he's like, asking me the process, and I mentioned that I noticed a medicine wheel. And he mentioned that, yes, he's an Indigenous soldier. And then I mentioned simply that in a few weeks from now, you're going to be able to have your symbol on your monument and be recognized. And this man, full leather chaps and full leather jacket, all that, just hugged me in the middle of the cemetery. And it's those moments, those personal moments together where we can do something good for somebody and have them be seen is really, really important.
Yeah, it's a sense of validation, right?
Exactly.
When you know that the stories within your own community of how your people were just as relevant and in such a big part of our history. It's nice to get that validation. So
exactly,
beautiful. That's really nice. Okay, so you seem like very together.
Sort of.
Young guy, obviously, and I'm sure you get that a bit. Being in this field, but you're obviously uber qualified. What are maybe 2 or 3 things that people would never guess about you, like a personal tidbit that we could share?
Oh well, there's always personal tidbits, right? The thing I was at a meeting a couple days ago, and we were talking about I had to reschedule a meeting because I had to go see my tattoo artist, and I think that was the big thing. And the guy I was with, he's like, yeah, we rescheduled. He's like, can I see your And it's the idea that I've got 2 sleeves and I'm working on more, right? And I think that always shocks people because they always see me in a suit.
Yeah.
And so when you find out that I've been getting tattoos for almost 20 years now, it definitely shocks people.
Yeah.
We talked about the reading quite a bit. What's another thing? So I've got 2 girls, and we're always doing things together and exploring our country and exploring different things. So that's always something else. But I think another thing is I got married. We were 24. My wife and I got started dating. We were 18 years old, 17 years old. So it's definitely, that's something that's shocking to most people.
Very.
That at 39, where we've been together the majority of our lives.
And still together. That's fantastic.
And still together.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're really, really proud of, and it's something that's always important. So I think those are the main things, other than, of course, the books.
I think you nailed that. Yeah.
But the tattoos are definitely...
I was not expecting that. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming out today and just giving us a glimpse into your life, into your work at Beechwood Cemetery, and I think this is phenomenal. It was really, really nice to meet you.
I really appreciate you interviewing me and having this discussion.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you.